G'day Jeff Adventures, Terry King here, welcome to the channel. I am sitting here with 3 generations of Curlings and we're going to have a conversation about this wonderful vehicle sitting behind us, which is a 1969 XW Ford Falcon wagon. So Jeff was the owner of this car originally. Can you tell us, Jeff, when you bought it, what was it like? Just give us a little bit of a history story.
I purchased it off a mate of mine who I'd known for many, many years. I used to quite often go around to his place and that, and come up with the decision to buy it. His lovely wife, Relma, it was her car. She didn't want to sell it, but money is money, so we ended up buying it. To the best of my knowledge, in the very early 80s, like maybe 80, 81, somewhere in about that vintage.
And then what was the princely sum for said vehicle?
That goes back too far for me to remember. Although I do know it wasn't pounds, shillings and pence. It was decimal currency, but no, I don't recall what it was.
It certainly wouldn't be what it's worth today, I suspect. And what was it about the car, Jeff? Did you buy it because you wanted transportation, or what was the purpose of it?
Well, I must admit, at the time of purchase, it never entered my mind to think I'd be handing it on to my son and then to my grandson. It was just bought as a car. Maddie's mum, it was her normal drive to and from work car, and it was just bought as general runabout car.
And the condition that it's in now, as in no rust, the motor, the gearbox, all of that, was that as it was when you bought it?
It was a reasonably tidy car, nothing like it is now, but it was bog stock standard when I got it. It had the 12 slotters on it when I got it, virtually looking as it is now. But after some time, I purchased a 351 Cleveland and put that in it. That motor come out of it was a boat motor, and it'd been bored 30 thou, it had a 4MA crank, shot peen rods and whatnot. So at the time when I did the motor, it was when they were transitioning to unleaded fuel, and there was no 98 octane fuel or anything then, so it was purposefully put together with reasonably low compression, open chambered heads, and a 650 double pumper Holly, and as they roller rockers and that. And I put a shift kit in the transmission, 3000 stall converter. While it was off the road, I put the XF power steering box in it. Makes a huge improvement to the steering comfort and whatnot. Had it for a while, and then over time it just got put in the shed, and it was always going to remain in the family. You know, I would never ever have sold it.
I understand you had an altercation with an immovable object with this car?
Guidepost, if my memory serves me.
Is that a flash-ass way of saying I had a prang? One time when coming down to pick up Maddie and my daughter, and I recall it as if it was yesterday, we were going past the Sundowner Hotel on the Warrego Highway. Nice straight stretch of road, and I thought, the old girl hasn't had a bit of a clear out for a while, so there was nothing around, so I just fed her the fat a bit, and it took no time at all, and it's doing, 100 mile an hour sort of thing. And I might add, not long before that, put brand new Bridgestone Super Cat tyres on it. Would you believe one of those tyres, I think it was the left side rear, let go. It just threw the whole tread. So yeah, it took off down the highway, sideways one time, and there was an embankment there, and it was pointing at the embankment, wheeled it back, and it come back the other way, flopped around, and ended up going down through the table drain sideways, and took a guidepost just on the left side front door pillar. We ended up facing Brisbane on the other way. Looking back at it now, it was stupid, but I thought, just give it a squirt in a straight line, up there, back it off, it won't worry. And as I say, new tyres and that. To their credit, Bridgestone came to the party. The repairs and the tyres, to their credit.
Going through that spoon drain sideways, mate, you're lucky it didn't bloody
it cost me a lot of money for my laundry bill.
And in saying that, we were on board as well.
Yeah.
Back in those days, it didn't have rear seatbelts in it. So just hang on.
Looking back now, it was pretty irresponsible of me to do that, but at the time, I thought, straight road, just go boop, up to 100, then back her off, And
mate, if nothing would have gone wrong, you would never ever remembered you'd done it.
It pushed that sill right in. It caved the sill in, like, big time. It whopped it.
Cool. So then we fast forward. It was sitting in a shed for a large number of years because you took it off the road. We were camping together out at Wuyong.
we were young.
Do you want to pick the story up from there, Matt? When it was and what we were doing?
Yeah. I think it was around 2005. You, me, and Dad were walking down the beach. Something come up. I can't recall how the conversation came up, but Dad hit me straight between the eyes and basically said words to the effect of, "Do you want the falcon, mate?" I didn't know what to say. You know, like I was speechless. You know, like it took the wind out of my sails, and that doesn't often happen. So all I could think about for the rest of that camping trip was, what am I going to do to the falcon? What am I going to do to the falcon? Well, slow it down, sport. We've got to get it there yet. This car's been sitting for X amount of years with
Trucks running
over the roof of it, and yeah. Anyway, I think you might have reached out to me, Tara, and said, when are we getting that car?
That's right, yep.
So we made a date and we went up to Dad's place. We have to fire it up. I think we pulled it out of the shed with the tractor.
With the tractor, that's
Yeah.
right.
Fired it up, and it's lucky it's got an electric fuel pump in it. We hit the key, fuel pressure. We're all standing around with dry chem extinguishers thinking, this is not good. You know, it's going to be like a fountain of fuel running out everywhere. We fired it up and sat there and ran. we were just amazed, you know, that it actually idled. You and I jumped in it,
Yep.
and we drove it home here.
Well, that's right. And that's what, 100 odd kilometres?
Round figures, yeah. We drove it home. I think we had to get fuel on the way, obviously, and it didn't miss a beat.
Rock hard tyres
Oh,
and
mate, those tyres, you know, they would have been 30-something years old.
They would have still been the Bridgestone ones that were on at that incident that we spoke of previously. And I don't recall, but I had already purchased a 9-inch limited slip disc brake rear end. I
You
don't
did.
recall
You
it.
paid $400 for it, and it was a disc brake, so disc to disc, limited slip, 9-inch.
9-inch.
So that was my first goal in the shed. I got to get the old Paul Warner out the back of it. I think it had 2:8 diff ratio in it, something like that.
They were tall.
Just put it up on stands, diff out, diff in. It just bolted straight in.
It did, I remember that. I was
Yeah.
here too, yeah.
Yep.
Handbrake too?
Handbrake cable, yeah. Had to make a few linkages up, you know, because obviously the Paul Warner was drum brake. That was a 3:0 ratio, which made a big difference from 2:8 to 3:0. Back then, you and I used to go to the swap meets.
Yep.
That was when we started hunting for parts. And I remember we were at the Toowoomba swap meet. There was a guy there that had a set of 3:5 diff ratio, so crown wheel and pinion for a 9-inch, and it looked in good nick.
Yeah.
So it was something like $50 or something like that I paid for this crown wheel and pinion. And at the same time, the crash that Dad was talking about, they replaced the door skin on that door, but it had rust in it, and it had bog in it. The door was rotten. And there happened to be a guy selling a bare door for an XWXY passenger front, exactly what I needed, so I bought it. It cost me another $50, I think. So I had to walk around the whole swap meet with this door hanging on my shoulder, and everyone's yelling at me, yelling out, going, "Wind the window down, mate. Wind the window down."
That door sat in your shed for a number of years.
Oh, at least 5 or 6 or more, probably more.
And I also recall somewhere along the lines, mate, we picked up a tailgate as well. Is that right?
We did, yeah. That was at the Bow Desert swap meet.
You were looking for a tailgate for years.
Yeah, looking, could not find one, and we found this tailgate that was tidy.
For a
was a
fam,
good
it was off a Fairmont.
An XY Fairmont. It was, Brock, yeah. Like that, it sat in the shed for years. But with this tailgate, I think what saved it, it had been fisherline.
Yes.
It was all full of gunk and that which had stuck to the fisherline in it. And I think that's what saved it
That's
from
right.
being rotten.
And I recall we were camping out at Tambourine, and we were talking about the tailgate and the door and doing the bodywork on it. And I think at that point, I said to you, well, why don't we do the whole thing? Why don't we just do the full Monty respray?
See if my memory serves me right.
Okay.
I thought it was on one of our big trips.
It could have been. It could have
And
been.
it was, we were this side of Booyah on the return trip. It was our last camp. So it was a trackless crossing trip.
Okay, yes.
And we were sitting there, and that's when the conversation come up.
I think you're right now, mate. Yep, that's joining some neurons.
And I think we got talking about just doing the tailgate and the door.
Yep.
And because obviously, you know, you're the man when it comes to the panel work. I do the mechanical stuff, you do the panel work.
Yeah, yep, that's about right.
And you hit me between the eyes and said, why don't we do the whole car?
If I could just interject for a moment, I have sat around camps with you guys on numerous occasions, And could I respectfully suggest that that conversation may have been port infused?
Very possible. Very possible.
A couple of quiet lemonades before we had that.
So yeah, after that then we brought it over to my place and we proceeded to pull it apart. We went down, we pulled all 4 doors off, we pulled the front guards off, we pulled the bonnet off, tailgate, and the bumpers. So
Hood lining, all the interior.
all the interior, that's right. So stripped it down. Basically we left the motor and the gearbox in it and the body was still on the chassis.
Mate, I actually added up, and it was in the middle of COVID
Okay,
that
yeah.
we spent hours in the shed,
Yep.
and it was roughly 6 to 7 months.
Was it that long?
Yeah.
Okay, there you
Yep.
go.
Of weekends and
Yeah, we panel beaded her. We fixed the rust in it. It had, my recollection was some rust in the sills. There were dents in pretty much every panel. We fixed the dents in those panels. Let me interrupt myself here for a second and go into a little more detail on some of the restoration items and the challenges we faced over that 6-month period. After I repaired the rust holes in those few panels, we sanded the entire car body and all panels down with 240 grit before spraying everything with high build primer. After the primer was laid down, I sprayed a guide coat down with a flat black rattle can, and then we sanded all the panels down with 240 grit. We repaired the high and low spots that we found, and then shot everything with a second coat of high build primer. This was then sanded down with 400 grit in preparation for final paint.
Well, that's it for the bodywork, gentlemen. You can put the bulb away. It's now fully sanded down with 400 grit, ready for paint. The only thing left to do on the body is sand the door jambs and the under bonnet area. But all of the flat panels are finished and she looks really good, straight as a die. I'm very happy with that. So I'll go off to the paint shop and buy some paint next week.
After disassembly, I gave Matt's son Brock a quick lesson on how to buff stainless, and then he spent the next few days of his life polishing the stainless up. There were a couple of pieces that had large dings. I hammered them back into shape, sanded them flat, and Brock also buffed them to a mirror shine. A few of the stainless trim parts were painted, so I stripped them with chemical stripper, and Brock buffed them to a mirror shine as well. Many of the interior trim plastic panels were broken and everything was sun faded. I repaired the plastic panels with fiberglass matte, body filled those panels, sanded everything smooth, and hit them with a coat of high build primer. I then sanded it down with 400 grit and then shot all the plastic panels and interior garnish trim with a replica of the original Ford factory brown paint. I was not confident in spraying the exterior panels of the car back then. I have a crack now, however, and that's the beauty of experience, isn't it? I was confident in spraying all the jam areas of the doors and body as well as the underside of the bonnet. After hours of prep work, I laid down the color and was very happy with the end result. What was I worried about? As I often joke to Matt, don't overthink it, it's just paint. I believe I picked that little pearl of wisdom up from a YouTube video out there somewhere.
There we have it, gentlemen. Engine bay is sprayed. Wasn't without drama. That bloody wind kicked up just when I didn't need it to and started blowing that white flaky paint around. So I had to contend with that. But she turned out pretty bloody good in the end.
We built a spray booth in my shed by lining the walls, roof, and floor with plastic sheeting. The sheeting was held in place with tape and ropes stretched taut to form the corners of the booth. My mate Steve came over and he shot the car in a couple of hours. We then closed up the shed for 24 hours and waited for the paint to cure. The booth worked fantastic. Even though our plan was always to color sand the car, the little backyard booth kept all the foreign crap out of the paint that I usually get when I spray a panel outdoors. Once the paint had cured, it was time for color sanding. This process literally took days, maybe even weeks, but if you want a show quality finish, there's no way to avoid this process. Even the best laid paint out of the gun has imperfections and waviness. Color sanding flattens it all out completely and leaves you with a dead flat mirror-like finish when you're done. Check out the reflection of the trees in some of these photos and you can see exactly what I'm talking about. One word of caution, if your panel work underneath is a bit shoddy, color sanding will expose it and really show how crappy the prep work was. If you own one of these Falcons, I can give you the hot tip for sanding this curve. A pool noodle fits perfectly in there. The This last photo here, you can see the color the car was when we started versus the original Ford color that we sprayed. It was quite a large difference with the factory color we sprayed being much more burgundy. One of the most technical areas to address was the blacked out bonnet. Matt had purchased a sticker template that took hours to lay down in just the right orientation onto the painted bonnet. Then I had to spray the semi-gloss black paint on the bonnet and grille. This was a real pucker moment for me, as it was one of the most visible features on the car. Screw this up and you screw up not only the black section, but the base color that had already been laid down, and your template's now junk. As luck would have it, I ran out of paint on the last pass of the gun. The paint sputtered to a stop and left a slight waviness in that last pass. I was devastated. They say time heals all wounds, and in this case, it only took a few hours. The sputtered section laid flat as it cured, and the entire job came out schmick. We carefully removed the tape template to reveal this. Check out these photos of the finished product, and I think you would agree, it looks bloody awesome. One of the final jobs was to lay down the GT stripe and the Subaru sticker. This went off without a hitch, and the final product really did come up a treat and certainly exceeded my expectations. And it's come up as you see it now, and I'll do a couple of walk around shots and have a look at the panels, but it's as straight as a die. The paint is beautiful on it, and it's the original.
It's the colour code off the VIN plate, which is on the radio support panel.
And then again, Matt was using it as a weekender for years and years after that. And then not too long ago, there was another handover of the keys. So do you guys want to share what happened there?
Brock actually got married earlier this year. His lovely wife was getting ready at the same venue of where the ceremony was, so there wasn't a need for wedding cars as such, but where Ash got ready was probably, I don't know, a couple hundred metres, you know, from where the ceremony was. So I offered, did they want to use the Falcon? Ash's dad, Jace, drove the Falcon. Everything went like clockwork on the day. Then I sort of threw a little bit of a curveball out there, and then after I'd done my speech.
Maybe Brock can pick us up on the speech.
Dad stands up at the wedding and does his father of the groom speech. Towards the end of it, he says, "Mum doesn't know about this." And then he goes into his pocket and pulls out the keys. He said some more words, but I knew what was happening when he pulled out the keys and started tearing up. And
I think we were all in shock, and I don't think there was a dry eye in the place, actually.
Tearing up, and I was shaking a little bit.
That wasn't scripted, that was straight from the cuff.
Yeah, that was...
Yeah, it was all emotional from there.
I think all of us got a big lump in our throat then, and it gave me the greatest pleasure to see that my son and my grandson getting pleasure out of it.
100%.
But I must admit, the following day I did have to ask Matty the question. I said, "Mate, what's the go? Is it due for Rego or something?"
So with that, Brock and his new wife, Ash, they drove the Falcon home as the third generation of Mr. and Mrs. Perlin.
That's just bloody awesome. What a story. And it's credit to you, Jeff, for starting the whole journey.
I haven't done much.
It's a credit to Maddie for raising such an amazing son and handing it over. And it's a credit to you, Brock, because I know you're going to look after this thing, and you'll very, very likely hand that down to your children.
So cool. It's a family car. It'll never leave the family.
But in saying that, Tear, mate, if it wasn't for you, this car wouldn't look like it is today. It was you that sparked this off, that gave one the offer and the idea, and without your skills on the spray gun, the panel beating, all the work that goes in, it's the hard work and your time, this wouldn't be sitting here today.
Thank you, man. So, I appreciate that, mate. I appreciate that. You guys are like my family, and
yep.
I just love you to bits. Cool. Well, before we all start bawling our eyes out, let's pull the pin on this one. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. This is Jaffa Adventure signing off. Until next time, keep the shiny side up. Bye now.